What if you could turn every conversation into an opportunity not to talk more, but to genuinely connect with one another? You see, the communication is not in the many words that you say, it is in the how you say it. It is in the use of the right words, and even the use of the right words at the right time. And so communication plays a big part in how we build our relationship and in how we connect with one another. So welcome to another episode of the Stay On It podcast. Thank you for joining me again. I hope that we will be able to unpack this conversation on communication. One of the things I love about communication is that it's not just a skill, but it is a lifeline that gives life to us. It gives life to our relationships. It gives life to what we do. Because if, for example, as a creative, I just I just recorded the video and I did not release it, then it will have no impact anywhere. All right. If I'm able to do a good presentation, PowerPoint presentation, or a good piece of art, and I'm not able to present it to the public or present it to the audience and be able to communicate to them or tell them what it's about, then that artwork, that music, that song, so long as it's lying somewhere on the shelf, it has no life. We get the life by us sharing what we have, and that part of us being able to share effectively, it is through communication. So communication is dynamic. Communication and its impact is a dynamic topic, and it is one that we have to be consciously aware that wherever we are placed with these treasures, we are placed with gifts, we are placed with skills and talents. There's something that we have been given for every place and every season that we are in. But how to make impact with what we have? We have to learn how to communicate. We have to learn how to use this skill. And communication is dynamic because it's not just in the speaking, but it's also in other elements. Communication is made up of different elements. Okay, there is speaking, yes. There is listening, active listening. There is body language. All right. There is self-awareness. All these, there's listening. All these are elements of effective communication. And so we want to look at three things that I believe are important in us turning our conversations into places of connection, into places of meeting each other's needs and being able to grow together, being able to nurture in each other, and being able to actually create an impact and a lasting impact and influence and impact in people's lives. One of the things you have to know is that communication begins with you. I believe you are the greatest tool of communication. And so, how you come into the conversation is important. How you come, because people are coming to connect with you. People are coming to connect with your heart. People are coming to connect not with your words, but with you. And there's a big part where we have forgotten what it means to connect. We have forgotten that my state is important even as I go into that conversation. And so, in this conversation, I want us to unpack what does it mean for me to be a great tool in communication. One is how do I present myself in that conversation? And the conversation could be with your spouse, it could be with your boss, it could be with your employees, it could be with your staff, with your colleagues, with your children. It doesn't matter the conversation is with who, but self awareness is important. It is key in us building effective relationships because when I know what's the state of my emotions, when I know what's the state of my mind, what's my environment like, am I comfortable, am I okay, am I ready, you know, am I ready to have this difficult conversation? How am I going to say it without sounding in a kind of way, all right, that demeans or talks down on people is very important. Or if, for example, I know that my mind is not at ease, then I know that I will not be able to engage intellectually logically with this person. And so I would rather not have the conversation at the moment, or instead schedule for another moment, or I can still go into the conversation, but first of all, work on my mind, work on myself. If emotionally I'm not okay, then it means even as I go to the conversation, I'm not going to be present. And therefore, what I'm giving this other person is not something they can connect with. One of the things I tell people is that you cannot deceive anyone. We are spiritual beings. We will be able to tell when you're in the conversation and when you're not. And even if you try tricks and tips and fake it, we will still know that you are not present in the conversation because we can feel, we can sense it. Okay? It's important to be consciously aware. How am I going into that conversation? How am I going into that interview? How am I going into that conflict resolution meeting? How am I going into that presentation? How am I going in that coffee date with a friend, with a spouse? How am I going? What will prevent me or hinder me from being genuinely there? And when we are able to address this, it becomes the first thing that causes us to connect effectively. And one of the things I know is that the greatest need in us as human beings is to just feel that we have connected with somebody. And that's why you find that most times we are in a crowd, but we are lonely. We are in a group of friends, a group of people, staff at work, in the office, yet we are alone. We are alone because there lacks people who can genuinely, there lacks people who can genuinely connect with. So you are the greatest tool when it comes to communication and connection and influence and interact. And so you cannot neglect that part of how am I going? You cannot neglect that part of how am I? All right. If, for example, I'm someone who is easily affected by noise and we are in a noisy place, then I know I will not be able to give my all. And so it's important that we either change the environment or schedule the conversation, because in this state of environment, I cannot be able to connect. I will not be myself. I'll be easily distracted. And at times, it's not even the noise outside is also the noise inside. The noise inside is too loud that I can't hear you. And so I have first of all to deal with me so that I'm able to come into the conversation when I am well, I am okay. And it requires a lot of maturity. It requires a lot of intentionality. Just us saying, I want to come to my family, I want to come to my spouse, I want to come to my colleagues or in the office or in the workplace, I want to come whole. I want to come whole so that I'm able to connect genuinely with people around. The second important thing I believe we need to work on is our active listening skills. I don't know whether you've come out of a conversation and you have felt that I'm not sure I was heard. I'm not sure I was listened to. This person was so distracted. They were either on their phones, they were either, their minds were not there. Really, we need to develop the skill of active listening, because it's in the skill of active listening that we're able to hear not just the words but also the heart, because the heart is the place where we connect with one another. And so as they speak, we are able to read, the mood. We are able to read what is not said. We are able to observe the body language. You are able to observe the undertones. Okay, and listening is not just when we are face to face, but it's also on the phone. It's also as you read the text. Are you able to listen deep to not just what has been said, but what is the undertone? What's the underlying issue? Is there something that has not been said, that is being said in the process? When we develop the skill of active listening, then it will be able to help us connect deeply. One of the needs in a relationship is for us to be heard. And I tell you, you get that one person who listens to you, you will always be you'll always run to them, because remember that you speak powerful words, but if your heart is not connecting, really that will not make an impact into the lives of the people. How did you make them feel? They will not forget that. Studies show that listening is one of the skills that helps us to build stronger relationships. How are you listening? And remember, talked about self awareness. Self awareness helps us to be present in the conversation. And being present in the conversation enables us to actively listen to the other person. Can you imagine what would happen if you are in this conversation and both of you are listening to one another? Then you will be able to tell untold stories. You'll be able to learn more. You'll be able to hear more. But most of the times we go to conversations to speak, to be heard, to be seen, like so that at the end of it, it's said of oh so and so and so. But rarely do we go to conversations and say, I am going to connect. I am actually going to listen to that person. And we need to work on it. We need to develop it so that we're able to build stronger relationship. When we listen to one another, we will be able to actually meet the emotional needs of each other and be able to solve a big part of the problems that we are having. And lastly, be intentional in learning about communication. Be intentional in learning about the other person. Be intentional in learning about relationships. Because when we are intentional in what we are learning, then it becomes easier for us to adjust, be flexible, and be able to nurture and grow the relationships that have been brought our way. One of the things I know is that people are a great resource, and they're a great resource that have been brought our way, but we will never be able to harness what's inside of them if we are not intentional about people, if we are not intentional about connections, if we are not intentional about relationships. And I know at times we are in toxic relationships, and we have carried on, but I believe if we're intentional in learning, okay, intentional in learning about ourselves, intentional about learning about the other people, then it will become easier for us to build strong relationships. So be intentional about it. Be intentional in learning about that skill. What is it that I need to up on? What is it that I need to learn? What is it that I need to adjust? What mindset and behaviors do I need to get rid of so that I may be able to build stronger relationships? So the things are very key. One is that we have to be self-aware and conscious of our state even as we go to every conversation. Number two is that we have to develop the skill of active listening. And number three is that we have to be intentional in learning. Learn the other person. Learn what makes me different from them. Learn, be patient to learn. The other important thing in the undertone of learning is that we have to also learn how to observe body language. Observe not just what is said. Observe what's their mood. Observe when it is changing. Imagine if you are able to help somebody, listen to them. A listening ear will go a long way in solving some of the major heartaches that we are having, some of the major heartaches that we are experiencing, some of the emotional wounds that we are carrying require just an active ear, a listening ear, so that when I'm able to pour it out, then I'm able to grow strong. So let's nurture our relationships to growth, to greater connection, and grow them to long lasting